Yo, what is good, everybody? It's your boy Golden Falls, Golden What If, whatever you want to call me, and I am back. I'm back with a brand new Deku What If. What if Deku had a durability quirk? And this is going to be similar to my adaptive Deku quirk, of course, but it will have a far bit of differences. Obviously, adaptive Deku or adaptation Deku is a little bit different than just having durability. And of course, as always, if you enjoy, make sure to leave a like, make sure to leave a sub, make sure to leave a comment down below for anything you want to see in terms of Deku what ifs, in terms of my hero, or in terms of obviously my hero what ifs, Nafumi what ifs, Naruto what ifs, Tanjiro what ifs, really whatever is out there. And just like the variety of animes that I personally can do on the channel, well, HyperX also has a variety of gear that you can use, and so can I, to make these videos possible. And as you can probably tell, this video is sponsored by HyperX. And if you want to see or have any of this amazing, well, microphone quality, if you want to have a great headset, gaming keyboards, gaming mouse or mice, all of that stuff you can find at HyperX. And even for a limited time, they have some sick Naruto Shippuden or Naruto based keyboards and headsets and mice. With that said though, I'm not going to waste that much more of your time. If you want to check that out, the link is always in the description, and let's get right into the what if. Let's get it. This story starts in the home of Izuku Midoriya, a home with Inko Midoriya and also his father. His father, though, isn't what it seems. Inko Midoriya may be amazing, may be an awesome mother, smiley, supportive, and all of what you would want out of a mother. But this time around, Izuku has a father. Hisashi Midoriya, though, isn't the best of fathers. When Izuku is young, he grows up in a bit of a household that isn't too crazy, but at the same time, there's something that's extremely off. His mother doesn't feel comfortable around his father, and frankly, she doesn't feel comfortable leaving Izuku alone with him either. Of course, though, they are a family, and the family stays relatively the same, or at least during this time, all the way up until Izuku becomes about 5 years old. They would head to the doctors, all three of them, and learn of Izuku's quirk, or lack of a quirk. It seems as if Izuku's quirk is not showing in terms of, well, the doctor's own hypothesis and own research on Izuku's basically genetics and other things throughout his body. And this would enrage Hisashi Midoriya, getting him extremely frustrated, and that frustration would show in the later years. Hisashi would show signs of abuse toward Inko Midoriya, and also show signs of abuse toward Izuku Midoriya. Unfortunately, this is what happens sometimes when people are set on one thing their entire life. Hisashi Midoriya, when he was younger, he wanted to be a hero, wanted to be strong, have a powerful quirk, but his quirk, he was never able to master it, not even close. So he hoped that he would have a kid that had a powerful quirk and could carry on what he wanted. And Izuku, he seemingly won't be able to do that. Hisashi would begin taking it out on the young child. Hisashi's quirk is basically fire breathing to an extent, but he can't really overdo it, or he could extremely hurt himself. He smokes cigarettes and various other things to keep his flame going all the time and allowing him to use his quirk, but he would begin to abuse Izuku while nobody is looking. Of course, Inko would know about this and would soon realize this quicker than she would possibly think, but she would need to somehow get them out without enraging, well, Hisashi. Hisashi would leave burn marks on Izuku, hurting him horribly, thinking that he would leave scars as a reminder that he was a failure. But soon, something odd would happen. Months would pass, and it seems like Izuku's scars would disappear. these are scars. They're not supposed to be disappearing the way they are, but they are. Not so sure how this would even work, Hisashi would get more and more mad, thinking that somehow Izuku is faking it with some sort of makeup or whatever, trying to rub his skin to get it out. But there's nothing there. No makeup, no nothing. After a couple more nights, and around at the age of 7, Izuku would finally get out of that horrible situation with his mother. They would move to a brand new place, but he would go to the same school. Hisashi would just wouldn't show up ever again, at least for the next couple years. The reason for this, though, is because the police were called and they were shown evidence of what occurred during that time. During this time, of course, Izuku and Inko have a bit of adjustment period. I mean, anything would cause for an adjustment. But Inko would bring up the fact that how does he not have scars? Of course, she's seen, heard the screams, and she tried everything to get him out of there as soon as possible, and they were able to finally do so, and she apologizes that to the end of the earth. But how? How is there nothing there? Izuku doesn't know, shrugging, and eventually he'd be taken to the hospital just in case. They just want to check on if he's okay, what's going on with his body, and so on and so forth. And it seems at the age of 7 or 8, his quirk actually quote-unquote awakened. But that's not actually the case. He's had his quirk this entire time. It's just the fact that nothing and nobody would have been able to tell exactly what it was. It literally just lives within his skin. That's all his quirk does. It's as if his skin is not actually human flesh. In a way, it just makes himself more durable. It's as if he can change his skin to steel or iron, but at the same time, you won't be able to see it. But it seems as if his durability, like Quirk, actually involves different circumstances. It seems as if he takes burn marks, water damage, anything you can really think of, someone plunging an ice spike into his arm, I mean, all of this will make him more durable. It's as if he's adapting in a way to the, impacts that he's going through. But that's about it. He really can't do much more, and there's some theories maybe this makes his punches stronger, and the harder he gets hit, that means the harder he can hit, but that's yet to be seen. Of course, Izuku is still young, and maybe he can develop more powers that way, but obviously, he doesn't know. Of course, they would be excited to hear this, but it would be an interesting factor that Izuku would have to get hurt to get stronger. That's a whole different idea that they'll have to come up with, but nonetheless, he continues on with his schooling, and their family is far, far, far more happy, especially without Hisashi Midoriya. He begins to head back to school and do the normal things that kids do, but Izuku would still get bullied. He would try to explain to them that he does have a quirk, but there is no really showing it. But of course they think he's lying, and even Bakugo himself continues to bully Izuku, even actually using his quirk to a lower level on Izuku from time to time. But that damage would eventually help Izuku. Every time he gets hit, all he does is get more durable, especially to specific things, like explosions, for instance. The more he gets hit with those explosions, the stronger an explosion has to be to actually damage his skin. Now this is all happening unbeknownst to Bakugo, and of course they have no clue, and nobody else really does either. Every single little pencil that gets thrown at his face, every little stapler that gets hit on his arm, it all just makes him far, far, far more durable. Of course, throughout this time, Izuku would idolize All Might. I mean, that's just a thing. Most kids idolized All Might, but this was a little different. Izuku may have idolized All Might, but there was someone else that he believed that he wanted to be like, to be just as strong as him, someone that could get hit by a villain, not take damage, and protect everybody in their way. Of course, Izuku was like All Might in the fact that he wants to save everybody, but he feels that the best way to save everybody is to stand in front of the bullet, stand in front of a monster, stand in front of that villain. And that's exactly what Izuku wants to do, just like a pro hero by the name of Fat Gum. he begins to watch and analyze Fat Gum's work as a hero by the age of 14. 14 to about 15, Izuku continues to watch on, study everything he does. Everyone else may think it's simple what Fat Gum does, but it's not. It's not just him standing still and taking blows. There's far more to it in terms of analyzing a battlefield and such. On top of that, setting up your teammates to actually do the damage for you is something Izuku really needs to know how to do. Of course, there is no 100% guarantee that this strategy and this use of his quirk would allow him into somewhere like UA, but Izuku hasn't ever stopped trying, so why start now? At the last day of middle school, his teacher would begin to speak about giving a career aptitude test, but of course, that's not the case. He decides to throw all the papers in the air and say that he knows they all want to go the hero route, which is very true. Every last one of them do. But at the same time, heroes are very saturated. And of course, the teacher makes this very apparent, and that everyone's not going to be able to be a hero. Everyone says that Bakugo definitely will get in, and they've even heard that he's trying to get into UA. And the teacher brings up that Izuku is as well. And they all laugh and basically make fun of him, but the teacher doesn't really say much, saying that they all want a chance. Frankly, just an opportunity. And he won't drag Izuku through the mud for that. Of course, the bell would then officially ring, and they would all head out. Once they head out, Bakugo would stop Izuku and immediately tell him not to think about trying for UA. He's the only one that's supposed to be going there, at least from this ragged down school. Izuku says that there's nothing that's going to stop him from trying, and he's going to continue to try. And he's going to try over this next 10 months to get stronger. Bakugo just says that this is ridiculous. Someone without a quirk, but then Izuku cuts him off. I do have a quirk. I've been telling you this for years. Bakugo says whatever. Says that that's not even the case. There's no way he has a quirk. I mean, of course he doesn't. Izuku just shakes his head and he begins to leave. But Bakugo grabs his notebook and begins to walk over to the window, telling him that him jumping off the roof will be far more useful than anything he could actually do. He then shrugs and walks over to Bakugo, going to grab his notebook. But as he tries to grab it, he misses and slightly trips, and Bakugo realizes that Izuku's about to fall out the window. Bakugo reaches over trying to grab him, but he's not able to hold on, tearing a piece of his shirt off as Izuku plummets from the second-story building, slamming on the ground, and so does his head. He would lay there in a puddle of blood, and ambulances would come like crazy, picking him up and taking him away. Of course, this was not on purpose, all accidental, but just while in the ambulance, Bakugo is basically remarking to himself that this is crazy. He didn't mean to do that. He didn't want to actually hurt him. Izuku continues to get basically taken away by the ambulance, but out of nowhere, he would wake up. The gash on his head and the bruises on his back would disappear, and they would all look at him like, this is insane. How? It's been 10 to 15 minutes. How is he okay? They knew about his quirk, which would mean maybe, just maybe, he would recover faster, but that's a whole new level. How was he able to do that? Izuku begins to say that he has a massive headache and is extremely tired, and they realize that his quirk might work very similar to a regenerative power, but they're not so sure. That might be just an added effect. Izuku would pass out, and they'd still bring him to the hospital, but he would be allowed to leave the next day because there was nothing really on his body that was bad. Of course, Bakugo would feel immense guilt for this and even come to see Izuku in the hospital, but he was already gone. He would head over to the hospital, or head over to Izuku's place, and ask him what the hell even happened. I mean, he fell off the roof or out the window, and now he's okay? Izuku says basically nothing, telling Bakugo that he could just F off, slamming the door, but Bakugo knocks once again, telling him that he's sorry. He didn't mean for that to even happen. He didn't mean to at all, and this would force Bakugo just to walk away, but Izuku doesn't care. Look what he did. Look what Bakugo did. Even though it wasn't on purpose, when you say something like that, when you tell someone that they should just jump off a roof and basically end their own life, I mean, and then it almost happens, how are you supposed to react? Izuku will never want to be around Bakugo, and he makes that apparent. Izuku, though, would continue and will begin to train for the next 10 months. Yes, his durability quirk helps with his defense, but he doesn't have much offense. So for the next 10 months, his mother actually enrolls him in some karate classes or basically any classes that would allow him to effectively strike his opponents, and he would learn more and more in terms of martial arts. Of course, getting beaten up by people that are better than him actually inherently helps him get more durable and strong, which is pretty good, but at the same time, Izuku is a decently fast learner, so he would pick up on some things pretty quickly. Don't get me wrong, he's no black belt in 2 months or anything, but in the next 10 months, he would definitely graduate maybe a couple belts, and he would definitely be pretty good. He wouldn't be anything spectacular, but he would be pretty decent. Of course, Izuku would want to use this to get into UA, and hopefully, just hopefully, it would allow him to do so. After a combination of basically striking and defense and all those type of classes in terms of like MMA or martial arts, Izuku would also be studying on the side as well, and eventually leading him to the UA entrance exam. Izuku would approach this giant building and begin to walk over. He's staring at the building as he's walking over, and he trips, looking at the ground as he falls, about to hit face first. But he even knows that this isn't going to hurt. I mean, this has happened before. But out of nowhere, a touch happens on his back, and he begins floating. And he begins to think that he's going to float into the atmosphere, thinking that there's no way he can survive lack of oxygen. But then he looks to his right to see a girl holding his arm, making sure that he doesn't float away, releasing him onto his feet, and it's a girl by the name of Ochako Uraraka, apologizing that she used her quirk on him without permission, but didn't really want to see him faceplant. It's kind of bad luck. Izuku smiles and slightly laughs at this and says that it's fine, and actually his quirk would have allowed him to basically not take any damage at all, and it wouldn't have hurt even if he did faceplant. Ochako's pretty shocked by this, but finds it pretty interesting, asking if he has some sort of, well, defense quirk or healing quirk or something. And he says that he does, a durability quirk. He's not sure exactly the ins and outs of it, but it has something to do with defense and basically his ability to not really get hurt by the same thing twice, which is definitely something that is extremely positive. Ochako Uraraka definitely says that is the case, that he will definitely be an amazing hero in the future. They both head inside, and Izuku would sit down, and he would be forced to sit down right by Katsuki Bakugo. Of course, being annoyed by this, but not really caring, wanting to get this over with, he listens as President Mike begins to speak. He allows them all to head into their testing rooms to get the, well, written portion of the exam over and done with, and after that, he has them all come out, and they all get have an explanation of what the practical will look like. A bunch of robots, 1-pointers, 2-pointers, 3-pointers, stuff like that. As President Mike is actually about to explain the 0-point robots, immediately someone stands up that has blue hair by the name of Tenya Ida, telling him that he forgot this and he forgot the 0-pointer, but it's pretty obvious that he just got cut off. And Tenya would then look at Izuku and tell him to stop murmuring, because Izuku is writing in his journal, frantically trying to basically learn new things. Izuku looks at him oddly and tells him to sit down, that President Mike is still speaking, and that if anyone's being rude, it's him. Immediately Tenya Ida is shocked to hear this, but sits down. Izuku then closes his book as he listens to President Mike explain the 0-point robots, the fact that they should just avoid it. But Izuku looks at this robot and thinks he should avoid. This is interesting, because as a hero, especially the hero he wants to be, he needs to stand in front of the strongest thing possible, so that someone else that's stronger can destroy it, right? That's kind of what he wants, and maybe this will allow him to do so, but he doesn't want to think too far ahead. If that thing steps on him, maybe he just dies and he doesn't recover. there's no guarantee with recovery anyways, so he probably shouldn't test his luck. But Izuku would then be sent off to a nearby gate, getting ready for the test to begin. The gates would then swing open, and Izuku would go running out, being about on par with some of the faster people, but not really on par with like some of the fastest people, of course. People like Tenya Ida will outrun him by a mile, but he is pretty fit. Don't get it twisted. He's trained for a while. I mean, obviously he's done karate, he's done martial arts, so he's definitely quick on his feet. He immediately just runs to a robot, a 1-point robot, and tries to punch through it, and quickly he would realize how bad it hurts when he punches the robot. He punches it, and his knuckles begin to get so sore and red and bloody, and he's like not sure if he can even do anything. He continues to try, and blood begins to get on the robot. Eventually though, he would be able to punch straight through the robot, obliterating it. He would go to the 2-pointer and try the same, and it seems as if they have this same durability. It seems that he's hardened his knuckles by punching literal metal, and now he can punch through it without really damaging himself. Hey, that seems like a plus and something for him to definitely keep into account later on during his training. He smashes through robot after robot, but don't get me wrong, it's extremely difficult still. I mean, you're punching through solid steel, so it's nothing easy, but it's definitely easier than any human would even possibly think of doing it. Of course, Izuku would rack up some points, but quickly he'd realize that he was falling behind, running out of robots to actually destroy. So he decides that he's going to run around and see if anyone really needs help, if someone's getting attacked, overwhelmed, and stuff like that, in which he does find some people being overwhelmed, people that have overused their quirk. So to give them some extra time, Izuku takes hits from these robots, easily being able to parry the hits and also take the hits directly, as the people that he's helping are able to use their quirk to destroy the robot soon after. They thank him for his help, and Izuku continues to help people here and there, trying his best to just honestly help anybody else get points, in hopes that maybe this will count for half points at a robot getting destroyed. He's not really sure, but he can hope for the best. Izuku would then continue on doing this, but eventually the 0-point robot would arrive. The 0-point robot towering over buildings itself. Izuku would watch on and then begin to run away with the rest of the people. But then he begins to hear, well, someone calling out for help. He sees her stuck under some rubble, so he runs over, kicking the rubble off, trying to get all of the rubble off of her, and just as he does, he sees the foot right above him. So he picks her up, tossing her to the side, allowing her to actually not get smashed to bits by this giant foot, but the foot comes laying down straight on top of Izuku. But Izuku basically takes this, and the robot begins to get off balanced from basically the pressure that Izuku is making through the foot of the robot, tumbling over just based on the leverage that Izuku is making, and tumbles over to a building on its side. Izuku would then collapse and have really bad damage on his body, but after some healing from Recovery Girl, he would be just fine. And now his body's extremely durable to the point that a giant robot that weighs probably more than a ton just stepped on him. More than a ton is probably an understatement too. We could probably talk about more than 30 tons or something insane. Izuku just now is that durable. He's able to seemingly, or should theoretically, be able to take hits from some strong opponents. Of course, he doesn't really think of this that much because he's too on the idea that he probably didn't pass. Even though Izuku feels this way, he does just continue on to try and be happy. And of course, Ochako Uraraka would approach him, thanking him for, well, literally saving her. Izuku says that it's really no problem, and he wishes to, hopefully, they both get into UA, but he's not so sure he'll get in, because frankly, well, he didn't do the best in terms of the practical exam. He kind of laughs it off and says that he can definitely go to a different high school, so he'll give it a shot. He begins to leave and just heads out. He's under the assumption that he most likely will get a rejection letter relatively soon, but that's okay. He doesn't mind overall. He continues with his training, goes to his martial arts classes, and it seems like the letter has been delayed for a couple weeks. And honestly, the anticipation is kind of killing him. Yes, he thinks that he probably didn't get in, but come on, why is it taking so dang long? Of course, and eventually, that letter would come. His mother would run in with that said letter and give it to him. And it would be shocking. Holograms would pop up, and it would be All Might himself, congratulating him, telling him that normally people with this low of a score, in terms of the villain score of destroying robots, you wouldn't get in. But actually, Izuku seemed to figure something out. The robot score is not the only thing that mattered. He also got rescue points, and frankly, the rescue points also attributed to the fact that he was helping other people, something that is definitely practical in the root of being a hero. Izuku would continue to listen, and as he's told by All Might that guess what? He got the second place in the entrance exam because of these rescue or hero points. And Izuku is stoked by this. He wonders who's first. He's not so sure. But of course, I mean, one name does pop in his mind. Probably Bakugo. Of course, he knows how strong Bakugo is. The talent is there. He just hates the attitude. But he can't deny when you have talent. But Izuku has clawed, scratched his way to the top, and he's happy with this, and he's going to continue to do that. So when the first day of UA comes around and Izuku enters that classroom, he can feel the competitiveness within the classroom itself. He looks over though and he sees Bakugo and Tenya Ida arguing, just scoffing at that and walking away and sitting down, waiting for the class to start. But then Bakugo would realize, seeing Izuku, and he charges over, telling him that he shouldn't be here. He told him not to try, but Izuku doesn't even listen, telling him to just go away, and that the teacher will most likely be here soon. Just as he says this, Aizawa walks in, telling him that the kid is right, and that he should sit down before he gets expelled. Izuku would then watch on as Aizawa begins to explain what's going to occur. They're going to have a bit of an assessment, just to see where everyone's at. Unfortunately, they're not going to orientation, or at least fortunately for Aizawa, because frankly, he doesn't like the idea of them just getting praised over and over again, because that happens all their life anyways. He tells them all to get on their PE uniforms, head outside, and get ready for a bit of an assessment. After everyone is outside and with Aizawa will begins to explain exactly what they're going to do. Basically the middle school assessment, physical assessment, but this time with their quirks. Izuku hears this and he's a bit deterred. Of course, Izuku's quirk is a little bit different. I mean, he doesn't really add strength necessarily, and maybe he's gained some muscle and stuff like that, but I mean, how much is that actually going to add to his throws? How much is that going to add to his push-ups? And I mean, maybe push-ups he'd go crazy, but in terms of a lot of the other stuff, side steps, he'll be slightly faster, but come on, he won't be anything crazy. But just as he's thinking about this, Aizawa tells them that the number one person in the entrance exam should come up and demonstrate. And of course, that's Katsuki Bakugo. He heads up and Izuku just rolls his eyes, and he can feel his blood boiling. Aizawa even seeing the kid roll his eyes at the fact that Bakugo, is the number one up there. Aizawa points him out and points to Izuku and tells him to come over here and explain why he's rolling his eyes. Izuku explains that, well, Bakugo isn't, or might be powerful, he's not the nicest guy. He's actually terrible. He was a reason why Izuku fell through a window and literally almost died. But beyond that, he just feels that the attitude of a hero is not the one with Bakugo, and he feels the same with people like Endeavor, if you want to use someone's attitude like that, for example. And obviously Aizawa nods toward this, saying that he has a valid point. But Aizawa brings up that talent seems to be everything that matters. He gives Izuku the ball instead, and it tells him to throw it as far as possible. Without even complaining, without even guessing or second guessing, he launches it as far as possible, and he even shocks himself. That's 350 meters. he realizes what he just did, and Aizawa smirks and says and asks why he's, well, surprised. And Izuku doesn't really say a word and smiles and says that Aizawa must already know. Aizawa looks toward everyone and says that Izuku got in here practically only on rescue and hero points. The fact that Izuku utilized his quirks to its strength is the definition of practical. This quirk assessment isn't necessarily practical. It's a way to test the strength of a quirk that gives raw output. But Aizawa makes it clear that quirks develop. He points toward Izuku and says that Izuku thought that he wasn't going to be able to throw that ball nowhere near as far, or at least only a little bit further than his original score. But his quirk developed. Aizawa tells them that he can tell by this kid that's standing in front of him, how hard he works. And if they're not ready to work as hard or harder than him, they might as well leave now. He makes it abundantly clear as he throws the ball toward Bakugo, and he tells them that there's two people in this world. One that is gifted, and he points at Bakugo as Bakugo rips his quirk and launches the ball almost 1,000 meters, and he points toward Izuku, and the one that has effort. He makes it abundantly clear that these two people may be polar opposites, but they are just as hard to overcome in their own ways. He points to all of them and begins to speak. Now, if you're not willing to challenge talent or compete with efforts, then this place isn't for you. You might as well leave now. But with that said, I hope you all are ready for hell. And that is a wrap for part 1 of What If Deku Had a Durability Quirk. And if y'all enjoyed, make sure to show some love. Leave a like, leave a sub, leave a comment down below, all that good stuff. And I hope all of y'all have an amazing day. Later.